at Radio Free America. This is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Hey, and welcome everybody to our Daily Gun Show. Come to you live each weeknight at midnight Eastern, and we talk about guns for an hour. Our goal is to have a discussion that isn't following the news of the day, just a real discussion about guns with real people. Panel discussion from made up of people who are members of GunChannels.com. Gun Channels is a community we built 5 years ago now, and it's a place where people who are interested in firearms can hang out with other people who are interested in firearms, either creating content or watching content that's being created by others from the ground up. So we encourage people to participate in the show. It's supposed to be an effort in new media, meaning we're using the interactive nature of the internet, not just to take a radio show and stick it on the internet, but instead to have a conversation using the tools that we have out there, way to exercise our skills and our knowledge of these tools so that we can bring a Second Amendment or gun-related message out to the world and change culture while having a good time and enjoying a conversation. To that end, we got some people joining us on the Gun Channel side, and we do have some links out there, so if people would like to join in, let us know. But otherwise, there's already a whole bunch of links out there, and everybody's more than welcome to join in. We've got Al jumping in from Texas. Thanks for joining.
You bet. How's everybody?
Doing good. And we got Roosted jumping in from Minnesota. Thanks for jumping in.
Yeah, appreciate the link. Glad to be here.
Thanks for jumping in. And then I'm down here in Arizona. So today's Tuesday. On Tuesdays, we typically talk about Second Amendment issues, state of the state. Talk about Arizona today, I guess. And I don't know, anybody have any things that have come up that want to chat about?
I haven't heard anything specific from Minnesota yet.
Yeah, we good in Texas.
That was pretty lackluster.
So on Tuesdays, I try to do a Second Amendment workshop, Second Amendment media workshop, two-way media workshop, and the idea is to start having a consistent get-together to bring people who are creating content, Second Amendment related stuff in all different ways out to the world to collaborate with each other, network from each other, learn from each other, but also effort in uniting our message and bringing our efforts to kind of work together to further some, I don't know, some legislation or some defense or ideally some offense for the observance of our rights. So anyway, we had a chat today. Ghost Tactical was able to jump in for a bit, and some people were joining in from the outside, asked a few questions. We ended up listening to the Gun Freedom Radio's podcast like we do often. And I was working on this software. It's called VideoScribe. It's a whiteboard software. It's a software used to, a lot of times you see like it looks like an animated hand drawing some words or drawing a picture or something as part of a lecture or some sort of a, I don't know, infotainment type video project. So it's that kind of software used to create that. And I don't like the hand part of it, but I do like the ability for it to give you this sort of sandbox or whiteboard that's kind of a hybrid between a, what would this be? This would almost be like a PowerPoint software mixed with a video editing software. So there's a timeline down here, and between physically laying out your items, putting them in a timeline, and then adding animation to it, it allows you to make projects like this one. So I'm having to let this subscription go. It's an annual subscription based thing. I just don't use it enough, and it costs quite a bit, so I'm gonna have to let it go. I just figured before the subscription ran out, I'd finish a project over there. I've had a couple of them in the works, and this is a timeline. This is just a timeline from the span of the country from the Second Amendment till now. And when you divide that out, I used 1800 and 1900 as a couple of the waypoints on that timeline, and then started to add things. Some of the gun owners' rights organizations, when they were created, some of the firearms laws at the national level, some of the creations of the various, gun entities out there. First SHOT Show, for example, some just highlights in the history of 2A. And for me, at least, I like to, I learn more, I absorb more from a visual thing. Now, this one's a little bit glitchy because it's not finished or anything. We're just kind of looking at a version of the rough draft of it. But what we're looking at is basically an accumulation of stuff on a timeline layout of, I guess, highlights in the Second Amendment. What would you call this, calendar or timeline of events that have happened? And I guess a way just to visually lay it out in a way to make it a little bit easier to comprehend or understand where and when everything came from. Anyway, so that's what we talked about today on the 2A workshop. I basically went live for an hour or so, talked to Ghost for a bit. We sort of talked about this project and what it encompassed. I probably added another hour or two's worth of stuff to it in Ghost chat earlier. And then just doing some off-air stuff as we've been chatting. Have you guys used this software before, by any chance?
I've never seen it.
I haven't, no. I really like the visual aspect of it, though. It's nice layout.
It's fun to play with. I can add narrations and music to it. I haven't done everything to it. I don't know what this one does. Oh, this one allows me to fiddle with the background so that it looks more like a chalkboard or a piece of paper or some rocks or something, I guess. Curious though if anybody out there is watching has seen any stuff done with this stuff, any techniques or examples of anything interesting. Let me know so I can incorporate it into this. I think I have a day or two left to play with it. I'm going to play with it a little bit more tonight, and then whatever I get done, I'll just render it into a video and just have that for a future project or something. And then if anybody knows any alternatives to this, I've heard of one lead on an alternative to this, but it turns out to actually cost more than this. So if anybody knows any stuff that's comparable, or if you can get Adobe to do this, I do pay for the Adobe package. So if anybody knows any like alternate ways of getting this stuff accomplished, I'd be curious.
Clover might be a good guy to talk to about that. I'm not. I'm pretty much tech handicapped.
What did I do? Did I close everything that was open on the screen? Yes, I did. There we go. All right. Otherwise, any other 2A topics tonight?
What's going on in New Jersey?
As far as the magazines?
Yeah.
They turned everybody into class 3 or class 4 felons overnight.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know what the exact specifications are. I'm assuming 10 rounds or less.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an issue they have to deal with. It's happened in other states. In New York, didn't they change it to 10 rounds years ago?
Yeah, I think that's been a while now. I don't know about anybody else, but just 10 rounds is just not enough. And for that matter, who are they to tell us what we can and can't have?
I'm getting a lot of people from New Jersey into the chats to give us like a perspective of what it's like there. I think there's a couple of channels and gun shops that come out of there that are more of a consistent message from there. But unlike California or something, they got 7 million gun owners who are affected. In what 10 days? No, 11 days, 10 days, something like that. What day is it? You have to be 21 to buy rifles. So they get a little bit more voice, I guess, when that many people are affected. In New Jersey, I think there's 8 million people in the whole state.
And California is doing the background check for ammo now, and all that shit is being logged and shuffled off in a database somewhere, I suppose.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
Is the background check for ammo? Is that happening now, or is that the first of the year?
First of the year. They're buying all their ammo now.
Yeah. Yep, they sure are. Can't remember where I saw it, but I saw a little snippet on some streaming service somewhere. They were talking about this one gun shop had picked up like 20,000 cases of assorted ammunition, and they sold it all in like a week. So I guess at least some of the people in Cali are smart and trying to get ready for it. But what happens when you shoot it all up, you know?
Well, it is a consumable, so I definitely have a tack on, trying to infringe when you make, you inhibit the supply of the perishable or the consumable part of the recreation or the sport or whatever it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, with a bunch of dead air, so I don't know what else we're going to talk about. Bunch of people out there not saying nothing.
About federal trying to force civilians to buy 20-round boxes instead of the quote law enforcement 50-round boxes.
High capacity boxes of ammo now, huh? And that's federal, you say?
Yeah.
I hadn't heard anything about that.
Yeah, that started up. Stores got websites, whatever you want to call them. I got a notice from federal like last month or something like that. Place I go to still has them, but I noticed, especially SG Ammo's gone up like $7 or $8 a box or something like that.
That's ridiculous.
My place hadn't gone up that much, but it's nuts. What the hell is wrong with a 50-round box? You know?
Nothing. It sounds like a scam Federal's after to try and make more money off us.
I guess they got to pay for them fancy clear plastic boxes they put all them 20-round boxes in.
Yeah,
That's
marketing,
about the
whatever, like
dumbest thing I've ever heard of.
Well, for the longest time, the premium ammunitions were only used a bit. People weren't, buying bulk, or there wasn't, I guess, a demand for bulk. What do you call production ammo or high production? What do you call that? Like defense ammo.
Yeah.
So the military would, or at least the Border Patrol, practices with that. They practice with hollow points and stuff. So they're buying their stuff in bulk boxes, and I would imagine at some point people said, "Oh, I want to shoot that stuff a lot too," or I want to have a lot of it, so I'm going to buy it in the bulk packaging. But I think that's where it came from. I don't know if there was ever any official, stipulations or requirements set to the distributors on what to do with the boxes. But yeah, they always used to put the retail high-end stuff in boxes of 20, like you say, with all the goofy packaging to make it look appealing, make it look bigger on the shelf, I guess.
I like the bulk packs myself. It stores better in an ammo can.
But a lot of times if you're going to be, testing what ammo is going to work with your gun, or trying a new thing out, you don't necessarily want to buy 100 or 50 even. Just want to buy a couple and try it out. But I don't know.
That's true.
Is that something? What was that? That was like a memo that went out from federal to distributors saying, "Hey, quit selling the 50 boxes to everybody."
Yeah. Well, they're saying quit selling the LEO boxes or the ammo marked law enforcement or something like that. I forget how it's marked.
So
I don't know if
seven.
I've ever seen law enforcement.
Well, they're just labeled like, what do they call them? I guess they're LEO, but they're just labeled like bulk box or something. At least they always were.
Hmm.
And it's just, why would if you're going to be shooting a lot of it, what's the point of having all those plastic containers and packaging? There's just no point. Grabbing it by the handful is easier just having
The
it.
HST is branded Federal Premium Law Enforcement Ammunition. Well, big deal.
Yeah, I always just figured it was
Yeah, I guess I don't ammo myself.
So
I'm not going to buy that much of it, but
Seven Wonders is saying,
you're talking like retail 20 round box. It's like 75, 80 cents a round. Oh, screw that.
so Seven Wonders is saying, who is Al W? So Al is one of the members of Gun Channel. He's been around since the beginning, I think, right?
Oh no. I've been on here a couple of years, something like that. 2 or 3 years. I don't remember now.
And you're in Texas. What's your story?
My story is I am just a typical concealed carry consumer. I don't have a closet full of guns or anything like that. I wound up here digging through gun forums looking for information when I was trying to decide on a handgun for concealed carry. And that's about as much of the story as I can remember. I've been here ever since.
Right on. And you're one of the mods. You help me behind the scenes a bit. So one of the resources that keeps Gun Channels running. Appreciate it. And the show now has evolved into a panel discussion. So if you'd like to be on the panel, you can join us over on Gun Channels. I've been dropping the link on the other platform where we run the show, simply from convenience, because there's not another platform that can consistently give us a live room like this. And then anybody who wants to join into the show, like I say, there's lots of links out there, and more than welcome to jump in. Al, I think you said you've got a shop for today?
Yeah. Let me see if I can pull it up here.
One of the reasons we do the show on a daily basis is so that we can feature a gun shop every day. I enjoy personally checking out gun shops, and others do as well. So Al's got one that I guess is in your area that you're going to tell us about.
Yeah. So this is not a gun store per se. It is a mom and pop. So they call it a discount center. I think back in the day we called them department stores. One of those stores been around forever that has everything under the sun. But they have always had a really, really awesome sporting goods section. A great selection of firearms, loading, reloading stuff, safes, just about you name it, and they got it. And like I said, been around forever. Bought my first 2 or 3 handguns there. Back in the late 70s, I think. But it's one of those places you like to go in there because they just got it all. Local, local mom and pop always like to support your local folks and all that over the big box stores, or at least I do. So Gibson's Discount Center, and I think they're been around 45 years or something like that. Been here in town, so I'd go there before I go to a big box store. So there you go.
It's pretty cool. So unlike like an outfitter or something where it's just all sporting and outdoors type of stuff, this is more like a hardware store, general store, and then
it's more like a general store, general merchandise. You know, they've got, you know, I mean, you can buy, gosh, you name it. You know, it's like a small Walmart from 40 years ago.
Was there just the one?
I think there's a couple of them, but this one's, you know, been owned by the same family ever since it's been around. You know, I still see the same guy in there, or one of them. I think one of them died, but I still see one of the guys in there running the place that I've seen in there all my life. You know, and just a nice mom and pop store with a great sporting goods section. Awesome.
Very cool. It's neat to know the stores are like that too, because then at least, you know, people that are just out there shopping, doing their thing, they've always got that, you know, awareness that the guns are part of it all. They're not hidden away in some other part of town or in some different building even.
And there is always tons of people back in sporting goods, you know, buying, you know, hunting, fishing, archery, you know, gun stuff. You know, they've got a gunsmith in store that'll, you know, need sights put on or something like that. They sell the parts. The gunsmithing is free.
That's a nice perk.
Yeah. I need to get back in there. I was talking to them some time ago about finding some sites for my M&P. I got some in mind that they don't carry, but he said he can probably get them. So need to get back on that project.
They're saying, are you the same guy as Big Al? I don't know who Big Al is.
Oh, I don't know.
All right. Well,
So there's a story behind that whole Al thing. I've gone by Alan all my life. Okay. Well, so many of my friends started calling me that. I couldn't keep track of who knew me as Al and who knew me as Alan. So I just started introducing myself to everybody as Al. And so now I'm Al to everybody.
Just LD.
Hey. Hey, Dano, what's up?
Evening or good morning, peeps.
I don't know what other topics we got. It's 2A Tuesday, so we could talk about 2A stuff, and otherwise we can end it. But Dano just jumped in from Illinois. We just got done talking about that gun shop. I think you were watching over there on the YouTube side. And then I guess we can talk about Arizona. I don't know what there is to talk about. I certainly can't represent the whole state or anything, but yep, Arizona exists. We'll be hosting the Gun Rights Policy Conference next year, so that should be fun. hopefully we'll do it justice and do something interesting for everybody who shows up. Hopefully we'll get a bunch of people from gun channels to show up for something like that that can use the reach, can use the attention, can use the additional attendance, and hopefully use it as a way to have some fun too. We'll be in Phoenix. There's lots of places to shoot and do some gun stuff.
I have a question that I think the audience would be interested in, and you've been in Arizona for a number of years. I don't know exactly how many, but you've been there quite some time. And everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, many people from outside, from Hollywood, have a certain perception of Arizona via the West kind of may possibly be versus the actual reality. But your experience over time as to how Arizona has changed from, let's say, the first year or two or whatever that you were there to today, and the trends of Arizona and where you see that going, as as far as culturally, because it is different than a lot of other states.
You don't mean just guns, then? You just mean in general?
Well, I mean, we can do just freedom in general, which would include guns.
When I first moved out here in the 90s, I guess, the early 90s, it was pretty empty. So Tucson, Phoenix, I think Phoenix is at least doubled in size from the boundaries, at least, that I knew of back when I first moved out here. Everywhere else in the middle of nowhere now has stuff. So when I moved out here, it was still possible to go out and be in the middle of nowhere. That's not really possible. But on the other hand, I don't know if that's possible really anywhere anymore. So it's definitely changed over the last 20 years or whatever. And I wish I could say I was aware of like guns the whole time. I just wasn't into guns the whole time, and we didn't pay attention to it in the same way back in the day when you're just younger and before the internet. And I think those two things, when there wasn't an internet to reference. Nowadays, there's an internet to reference pretty much. You don't have really an excuse or the luxury of saying, oh, I don't even know. Now there is stuff to know and it's available. You make a decision not to know, but it's, the information is there. So I don't know. That's a good question, Daniel. I just don't know how much of it I can offer, is that unique to Arizona, or, just in general, the way that people are aware of things differently because of the internet and stuff. I definitely don't do enough stuff. I don't go to like car shows. I don't go to very many offline things at all other than gun shows. So I can't tell you, in other words, it's not like I go to, I don't know, some kind of car races every weekend for the last 20 years or something to be able to tell you what, it looks like from that angle or something.
Mm-hmm. What about in regards to culture is very much also indirectly sometimes related to beliefs of how one either should or should not be led via government, and that then leads to sometimes political affiliation. So I guess I'm thinking in terms of, have you noticed during your 20 plus years there, the changes in the population's tendencies to be either pro-freedom or and that seems to be just as strong as when you first noticed it, or do you notice any changes?
That's interesting too. So I think Arizona is an interesting state because we're fairly pro-freedom, but then we're not 100% pro-freedom or nothing. So I think there's some other states that are more just free. Nevada, I think, is a state that's more represented just being free. They don't have taxes. They got just as good at gun laws until recently. And constitutional carry and stuff. I don't have constitutional carry, but they had a much different CCW thing for a long time, as far as being able to like drink and go into bars and stuff. But basically, Arizona, I'd say, is definitely changing, because when I first moved out here, it was mostly retirees or cowboys or whatever you call it, just people that live in Arizona, like ranchers and a lot of farms, so farmers. And the cities were industry, Raytheon, and big industry was out here, and all that industry died or went away. Couldn't compete with like Texas offered lots of incentives for industry, and Arizona just sat around saying, "Oh, we're next to California, so they're going to come here no matter what." I think was the or whatever. They just looked at them as funding sources, but that's a whole nother thing. But Arizona doesn't seem to be real friendly towards industry. They've got some military that they thought for the longest time wouldn't go anywhere because of our weather and whatever. There's like the graveyards and stuff out here. They figured, I'm sure they figured, the state figured, there's nothing the military's never going to get rid of these graveyards, because where are they going to move it? They didn't realize the government would just say, yeah, we'll just sell all that. We just won't have it anymore. So they got a little scared with that, and the industry left. So when you got less retirees coming out here and they're all dying, and then industry left, it's certainly changing the dynamic. And now you've got tons of California people who can afford to live here and still work in California, I think. So they have a tie to California, unlike a retiree that came from somewhere oppressive and came out here and might change their mind or live differently. These are people that still have ties to wherever it is that's oppressive. So who knows what kind of dynamic we're heading into. But it's certainly changed over the years. And it's not to more freedom, it's to, more and more emulating city life in the middle of nowhere.
Is city life in a general sense, or more what I'll call California type culture?
Big state trying to be the answer to everything, and just giant public works for no reason. Mm-hmm. There used to be just a little courthouse. Now we got big giant courthouse buildings. Why? Big giant elaborate artsy buildings. Back for the longest time, it was just a utilitarian building, and it worked. They needed more. They stuck a little addition on the back, but now it's a big glass building that costs millions of dollars because of some contractors, who are trying to be attracted to this town and stay here after they built other houses or something.
Yeah, it's in some ways, when I see Washington D.C. is the ultimate example of it, but state capitals, counties, villages, municipalities, I see it all over the place. When they can have access to money that's actually not theirs because it's ours, suddenly the public trough is a great place to express their views in regards to art and things like that, art and buildings, public architecture, in ways, since they don't have to pay for it, that we as individuals would never consider, or less of us would consider of it, versus a more of a practical perspective, which is what you had mentioned earlier.
You guys have had a big shift in population demographic down there too. I think your voting records from Arizona really reflect that this year.
What do you mean? Like different demographics of voting?
Different.
Going from a bright red to a purple.
Yeah, there you go. That's one way to say it. You have different people moving into the area from different ethnicities, people that are more reliant on a government and not themselves, so they're more willing to vote for social programs. Is that the right way to say that?
I don't know about that. I think it's more of people dying. There's nobody else moving here. I mean, it's been the same cultural mix or whatever. I thought you meant like as far as like, kids voting versus old people voting, like demographics, but I I mean, the makeup of the Arizona is basically a bunch of old people that moved here from somewhere up north. For a long time, they were, what do you call it? They call them snowbirds. So they'll live in both places and either be permanent or not residences in either one, but basically still have income and still, spend money in both places. And then eventually that turns into sitting in one place, usually down here, and then less and less activity, right, as you get older. And then, that kind of stuff changes. So all the people that live here just doing their thing are having kids, and then those kids are getting older and then voting. And I think that might be a thing, but I don't know. That's a tough one because I don't get to travel enough to see what it's like in other places either. I mean, it might be better here for all I know than it is someplace else. And it just seems, all I know is what's changed here. I don't know if it's been more rapid or more slow. I suspect from just listening to news and stuff, we're typically slower than every place else. If something happens in the culture and the country, we pick it up later, and then it happens here last, or it ends, in places like here. So to some extent, we're just I don't know. There don't have enough people here to have that much. I don't know. Change or whatever, there's only so much that can change when there's not that many people. There's no new industry really. There's just the cities have gotten larger.
So you had mentioned just in passing that the demographics as far as the elderly coming there, than the snowbirds, and you mentioned that they're dying off, but so do you think where they're coming from is, because obviously there were people who retire are going to die sooner rather than later, but instead of coming in massive numbers from the traditional locations, being like the Midwest and the North and things like that, that not that people aren't still coming from those areas, but are also now included from California, which people typically didn't do because California has nice weather already.
Oh yeah. It's not because people are old. So old people dying is what do they call it? The baby boom. And that's a massive number of people. The amount of us and the people between us and the baby boom won't be enough to sway anything. Like, we won't be a ripple. We'll just be in the typical, whatever. We'll be in the typical age groups or whatever. We won't be a swell in the whatever age group we're in. So those people dying are just people from that like massive extra inventory we had of people leaving. So anyway, we're the people that we're seeing in Arizona now, from my experience or from my perception of it, aren't with snowbirds coming from like Chicago or New York or someplace, but instead people come from California, not because they're old, but because, like everybody says, it costs you $1 million to have a house over there, and it costs you $250,000 to have a giant house over here. So just in the savings and real estate, you can afford to travel back and forth. And if you can do your job remotely, I think there's probably people that have their families here and then just have a place in California to go do their thing, and then spend the majority of their time here.
So the older people that are dying off are being replaced basically by younger people who are still of working age, but from the West Coast rather than from the other parts of the country.
Yeah, and those people aren't crazy, so they're probably divvying up their money and their tax money. I don't know. I'm not that savvy on it, but I would assume they're, not losing money. They're trying to do it to save money in the long run. So
yeah, I'm just looking for your perception, not a stated statistics or anything.
Yeah, but this is now way past the state of Arizona as far as gun laws and stuff. But I think that where it all comes from is where these people are from. And even though snowbirds, I don't think the snowbirds, I mean, a few of the snowbirds are responsible for the Arizona Citizens Defense League and then constitutional carry and all the cool things that they've brought us. But aside from that, most snowbirds aren't coming down to Arizona and then going, oh, guns, awesome. Let's get into guns or whatever. So, it's not like because we have these Californians, it's all of a sudden a big drastic change. But at the same time, I don't think any of these Californians or people coming from wherever they come from have any culture or any traditions with guns or any ties or any, what's the word, like any, they don't have any respect for guns. So if something comes along and says, let's get rid of guns, they're going to be like, yeah, sounds good. They didn't have guns where I came from.
I mean, this is me looking at it from the outside, but I guess I look at it as like what I'll call Western values. Because part of Western values is that unique relationship with firearms, but also beyond that, that unique relationship with freedom of your life, freedom of the land, freedom to do as you will. So where from as you mentioned, urban areas, just because of their density of population, you can't have that sort of freedom to do whatever you want in your backyard, to use the land as you choose. Urban life is a mash pit of rules and regulations, because otherwise it would be chaos.
Sure. And there's always an exercise in whatever the word would be, working together. So whenever I first moved out here, whenever I first started building gun websites up, early 2000s, end of the 90s, there was concern. They called Tucson a basin, right? It's like imagine a giant mountain that fell over, like half of the mountain fell over and like the peak fell off and fell over next to it. And then that's what we got here. So we got the main chunk of mountain and then like this other piece of mountain that fell off and it's kind of laying next to it, and Tucson's in between the two. So they call it the basin, and we've got recreational public lands all around it everywhere. And Arizona's like 80% public land. So Tucson's just in this like corridor of private land that goes along the highway and whatever between the Indian reservations and forests and BLM and parks and stuff. We also have some parks for the saguaro cactuses, right? The big stovepipe cactus looking things that are national parks. So we got all kinds of public land in here that has different jurisdictions and different trespassing laws and different laws as far as hunting and just recreational shooting and stuff. So anyhow, there's all kinds of people who have demand on that land. You got a lot of horseback riders have always been out here. You got ranchers who, for $5 an acre, can use the public lands as their grazing land. And then all kinds of issues there, because then it's their property walking all along public land that they pay $5 an acre for. And then they expect the government to keep track of their property walking around all the time. And then you get horseback riders, like I say, you get BMX type of bicycle riders. People are bicycle, ride around with non-motorized bicycles. And then you get 4x4s and real bicycles, like motorcycles, right? That want to zoom all around. And then you get bird watchers, because this corridor, one of these, there's areas of desert. Arizona's less deserty than the Badlands of California or whatever they're called. The desert of California over there where Death Valley is. And then New Mexico's got a lot of like white sands and stuff. It's literally desert. So Arizona becomes like a green corridor for pretty much everything from butterflies to birds and everything else, critters even, that migrate. So there's all kinds of naturalists that like to go out and either for science, right, to follow migrating patterns and stuff, or just for bird watching. There's like all these bird watching contests where they try to catch or see as many birds as they can in a year. They come to Arizona by the swarms because of the opportunities and stuff. Oh, I don't even think I'm catching it all. There's falconeers, people like to go hunting with their birds out here. And then, of course, recreational shooters, hunters, sports shooters, whatever. So there's lots of opportunities for stuff out here, and there's tons of demand on the land. So even back in the day when I first came out here and started doing stuff online, one of the first things I did was put attention towards that. I don't know what to call it, like those seminars, those workshops that would come around. As soon as I started becoming aware of them, almost immediately I started becoming aware of like the cyclic nature of them. here, dude. So back then there was these kind of concerns, or like I guess they were just called workshops, but basically they were like, oh, there's pressure on the public lands, and it's gun owners that are the cause of all the problems. And it's like, is it gun owners, or is it the fucking 4x4s, or is it the horseback riders, or is it this? You know, it's like everybody had to learn to get along back then, and now there's just more people and more organizations involved, more issues, more types of recreation. Now you got geocaching, you know, that didn't exist really until GPSs and, you know, phones blew that up.
Okay. I mean, I didn't mean to. I know you're not exactly prepared, but I was just interested in your general perceptions, and I think you did. Certainly gave me plenty of information, so thanks.
Yeah, sorry, I got distracted there because somebody's starting a new Instagram channel called Gun Channels.
Oh.
But whatever. I don't know the name. It's just two words next to each other.
All one word? No underscore at the end.
No, not markup. We're lacking in the United States. A comment from the side that we use, but hates your guns, hates our culture, hates your rights, property. Echo says, what we are lacking in the U.S. is positive gun culture. Every time you turn on the television set, you're reminded of negative gun culture, violence, drugs. It's something we really need to start the basics, start establishing gun culture. Sure. No disagree. But got a weird echo going. Dano.
Sorry.
Yeah, we hear that a lot. But number one, if you turn on the television, then that's a choice you make. And as less people make that choice, technically there's less televisions being used. There's a lot more internet sources and stuff. So as you make a choice on what you watch, especially on an internet device, that is the systems that provide that to you are aware of it. Technically, they have to be, because they they literally gave it to you. It's not like television where it's being broadcast and it's programming being broadcast, and what you decide to tune into is your business. On the internet, it's directed to you, it's delivered to you from an envelope, or from a box. So they literally technically know what you delivered or what you ordered. So they can definitely keep track, even if it's an anonymous thing. They can keep track of trends and patterns. So it's a lot less random. It's a lot less assumption. They know exactly what's being viewed out there. So by realizing that and making a decision when you view things, you have influence on what direction things go forward. And we always are big advocates here of more and more people adding their voice to the collective conversation can steer culture. So a couple of things there. Yes, I agree that guns are portrayed a certain way by people who disseminate agenda-based programming. But the challenge or the opposition to that, one of the oppositions would be independent grassroots creation of content, and your appreciation of that and your knowledge that interacting with the platforms that offer that or help us distribute that is what it's all about. Educate your audiences, really. Going forward, people are going to be less and less unaware of their influence and their value, right, to the whole thing. We grew up, all of us old people grew up being the cogs, the numbers that didn't matter, that had no influence, because we were just, they said they were catered to, but they were just cows being fed. So when you got a bunch of cows that can say what they want to eat, all of a sudden they have to create menus and stuff. So we're changing that. We're changing the status quo. All right, well, now they're just saying a bunch of stuff. Put up plywood, lending assistance, answering questions. I don't know. So we're going to keep going. Is there anything else to talk about?
I didn't have anything else.
Yep. All right. Good on you guys. I appreciate you guys jumping in. We try to do a panel discussion each weeknight at midnight Eastern, and keep it involved with the people out there. So thanks for jumping in, and we'll see you at the same time tomorrow. What's today? Tuesday, so tomorrow is Wednesday. Stay tuned for Rick. He does his Shooting with the Disabled chat in the evenings. Clover used to do a Wednesday chat, and then Matt does his chat. He had a new guy on Monday, so he might have some new people on Wednesday as well. And then we'll be back here tomorrow. You guys got anything you want to throw out there before we head out?
Good.
Right on. Thanks again for jumping in. It makes the show really short if I'm in here by myself. So again, thanks for everybody who participated.